Hey guys, it's Cuberstash, and welcome to part 3 of my YruRU tutorial. So first off, I was originally planning on making this tutorial sooner. It's been about a month since I uploaded part 1, which is not exactly how I planned it to go, but the reason it's been so long is this method has been continually developed over that month, and I wanted to make sure I had a good enough handle on things to be able to explain it to you guys, and also to make sure I wasn't making a video that was going to be obsolete in another week or two. So before you watch this video, I would strongly recommend you watch parts 1 and 2 of this series. I mean, come on, this is part 3 of a series. You should watch parts 1 and 2 first. And also, you should be able to do a YruRU solve on your own without any help, and with unlimited inspection time. So throughout this video, I will be going off of the GitHub page posted by the creator of this method, Yash Mehta. If I'm pronouncing that name badly, forgive me. So that will be linked in the description. Please check that out. This video is mostly just presenting that information in video form. Everything that you need to know is on that page, and it's very well made. The images are great. The layout is great and easy to use, so definitely check that out in the description. I would recommend having it open as you watch this video. So I'll be going over two things in this video. The first is improving CP tracing to be able to consistently do CP line in under 15 seconds of inspection, because with the beginner's tracing it's not really possible to do that. And the second thing I'll be going over is partial edge orientation during the first block extension. So this eliminates the terrible recognition of edge orientation if you don't influence it. So with that, let's get right into it. So something interesting to note about tracing corner permutation. If you have these two corners already solved, there are only 30 possible locations for 5 and 6 to be. So we can, instead of memorizing swaps, we can just memorize a circlet, so the order that we trace the pieces. So throughout this section I'll be showing examples with these two corners solved, and once I'm done with all the circlets, I'll show what to do if they're not solved. So first I want to talk about the trivial cases, which are cases like this. This is one of them where 5 and 6 are already friends. So if you were to do this with the beginner tracing as outlined in part 1 of the series, you wouldn't need to do any swaps. You would just read this way and get your number that way. So the same thing applies if you have them here or here, and any of those positions if they're swapped. So that's 6 cases already of the 30 that we don't need to worry about. If they're like this, these are cases where they're almost friends. So if we were to imagine a U move, they would be friends. So then we just have to trace as if it was off by a U move. So we go this way, so we can just trace these in this order. And same thing goes for if these are swapped and if they're here, and also if they're off by an R move. If we put them here, we could imagine doing like an R prime move, and then we just read clockwise on the top. And same for this if these are swapped. So there's 8 more of the 30 cases that we don't have to worry about. So now we're just left with 16. And we can further reduce these 16 by simply reversing the circlet if 5 and 6 are swapped. So if we go back to this case, we would read clockwise with these here. If we were to swap these two, we'd have the same cycle but in the opposite direction. So anything having 5 and 6 swapped just changes the direction you read. So we only have to worry about 8 possible cases. So this definitely seems manageable to do, and it is. And this will help you inspect sub 15 every time. So you can find all 8 of these cases in the advanced tracing section of the CP line page on the GitHub I mentioned earlier. So I'll just mention all of them here. So if 5 and 6 are in 1 and 3, like this, you read this way, and it's shaped like a letter N. Again, check out the website for good pictures of this. Now if 5 is in 1, you would read this direction, and if these are swapped, so that 6 is in 1, you would go the opposite direction. So this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. So this is the inverted letter N with the two corners in 3 and 5, and this one goes this way. If 5 is in 5, you would go this way, and if they're swapped, so 6 is in 5, you would go the other way. Here's the diamond, where 5 and 6 are in 5 and 1. So with 5 and 5, you read this way, tracing out a diamond shape on the cube like this. And if these were swapped, you would go the other direction. Here's the arrowhead with the pieces in 6 and 2. And with 6 in position 6, you would read this way. And if these two were swapped, you would go the other direction. Here's the lightning bolt case with 6 and 5 in 6 and 1. If 6 is in 6, you read this direction, tracing out a lightning bolt like this. And if these two were swapped, you would go the opposite direction. This is the inverted lightning bolt with 5 and 6 in 5 and 2. And with 5 and 5, you read this way. And if these two were swapped, you would go the other direction. Here's the letter V case, where 5 and 6 are in 2 and 4. And with 5 in number 2, you would read this direction. And if these two were swapped, you would go the opposite direction. And here's the last case, the inverted letter V, where 5 and 6 are in 4 and 6. With 6 and 6, you would go this way. And if these were swapped, you would go the other way. So those are all the circlets you need to learn. Once you've internalized all of these, you'll be able to easily inspect your corner permutation in under 15 seconds if your corners are solved like this. This is much, much easier than the beginner's way of swapping pieces and tracing, and this will definitely cut down on your inspection time and make this a much more viable method. The other thing to mention about these is when you use these circlets, so this is still the inverted letter V with 6 solved, so we're going this way. So what you want to do is find corner number 4 and then read the next 2 corners in the circlet. So corner number 4 is right here, so then we go here to here, 3, 1, and that'll tell us our swaps. You can check out the beginner's tracing section in the CP line for all of the possible swaps, or you can check out part 1. In part 1, I was using 3 numbers, so this would be 3, 1, 2, but it works the same way if you only have the first 2 numbers, and it saves a little bit of time. Alright, now I'll talk about cases where your DL corners aren't solved and what to do in this case, because there is a better thing you can do than just tracing 2 moves in your head and trying to trace the CP from there. So if they're 1 move away, like these yellow-red corners, what I recommend doing is just doing that move in your head during inspection and tracing from there. So in this case, if I imagine an F prime move being done, 5 would be in 5, 6 would stay in 3, and this circlet is the inverted letter N, so I would read it like this, and 4 will move up to here with the f prime, so I would go 2, 3, and that would be my tracing. Now, pretty often if you use x2, y2 neutrality, you'll not get any cases where you can solve the corners in one move. So instead of tracing 2 moves, there's something better you can do. So in this case, I'll be doing the yellow-orange corners. So I could solve these with u2 f prime. So what I'll do to solve this case is I will just imagine these two being swapped. So instead of having this DL corner in here, we'll just take this corner and put it to there. Now we can do our tracing without tracking any moves or doing any weird swaps. So this is a trivial case where if we were to do an R prime move, these would be friends. 5 and 6 would be friends. 5 would be odd, so we would read clockwise like this. So here's corner number 4, so we'll read the next two. So this is 2, and then the one that would be here is 3 if we were to do an R prime like that. So 2, 3, that's our tracing. So that means we can swap the green corners. And we have some other options, but I'll stick with this one because we have to find the corner that swaps with this one. So in this case, we need to swap these two. And the way we do that is simply set up this corner to be solved with either f prime or f2. Any f move will work. And set up its swap pair into UBR. So since we can swap these two, the green pieces, or these two, since we're imagining these being swapped, all we need to do is U2 F prime and CP is solved because our swap pair is right here. So that solves our CP. Okay, I'll show you another example to help you better understand this. So in this case, we'll be doing the yellow and orange corners. So I could solve these with U2 F prime. But instead of doing that, we'll just imagine this corner is here and trace from there. So 5 is in 5 and 6 is in 1. So this is the diamond circlet. So we would read this way. So we would look for corner number 4. In this case, it's in the DL spot right here. So it's actually right here is where we would start. And then the next two are 2, 3. So that would mean that we need to swap the green pieces. So this one is a green piece, and then the other one, its swap pair would be here. So if we just did U2 F prime, it wouldn't solve the CP. We need this to be in UBR. So we could accomplish that doing U2 R prime, and then I'll make this F prime a wide F prime, so that we can do this with R2 S2 prime. And there's our CP line. So there's something else that might happen when you're doing this type of tracing. So let's trace this one and see what that might be. So I'm doing the orange-yellow corners again. So 6 is in 6 and 5 is in 1. So this is the inverted letter N circlet. So we would start here and trace like this. Because 6 is in 6, we would go this direction. So here's 4. We would go here. We're swapping these. So this is 1. And the next one is 2. So 1, 2 would normally mean solved CP. So there's no swaps we need to do. So we can't put a piece in here to swap with this one because there's no swaps to do. So if that happens, just set up this corners like this so that it can be solved with an F2 and do either F, U, F to solve the CP or F prime, R prime, F prime. And either of those will solve the CP line when you have a when you have 1-2 tracing. So that's about all I have to say about the circlets. Just try to memorize those 8 circlet shapes, and if you're still having trouble with it, check out the example solves on the GitHub page. So now we'll be moving on to partial edge orientation. Alright, so now I'll be talking about partial edge orientation. This is the step after CP line is already complete, and the goal of this step is to extend to a 1x2x3 block, adjust the centers so that a U or D center is on top, and also ensure that the DB edge is good to aid in EO recognition and case reduction. So this sounds like a lot going on all at once, but it's really not too difficult once you get the hang of it. So the first thing you want to do is set up to one of the triggers I showed in part 2 of my video. So that entitles putting the center on the right face connected with an edge and the other edge in the U layer. So in this case, we could connect these and put in the line like this. So before we do that, we'll want to check the orientation of these edges. So in this case, since we don't have a U or D center on top, we'll have to do an R-wide move after the extension. And the goal is to use that R-wide move to put a good edge into DB and maybe orient some more. So while you're doing these moves, you can check out the orientation of these other U layer edges. So these two are bad and this one is good. So we want to watch for the bad ones and make sure one goes into UB before we do our R-wide move, because that R-wide move makes it a good edge, and now we don't have any blind spots. We can see all the oriented edges, all the edges we need to orient right here, and you'll have much less of a recognition pause than if you don't do this. If it's easier to set up to a case like this where U or D center is on top, you can still do partial edge orientation. Simply do your extension, put a good edge in UF, and do an R-wide 2 move. That'll put that good edge into DB, and then you can do edge orientation from there. Okay, so I'll show a few more examples with this same CP line. So in this case, our center is here and our edges are here. So what I would do is just pair this up here, put it on the right side, and bring this edge into the U layer with an R-wide move. So now, since we don't have a U or D center on top, we want to look for bad edges. So this one's bad, these are good, and we also brought a bad one over here, but I'll just use this one. So after doing the U-wide 2 move, this is already in UB, so we can just do an R-wide, and we know this edge is good. We only have to look at the remaining edges to figure out our edge orientation. Okay, here's another example. We have our center already paired with an edge here, but this edge flipped. So the way I would deal with this is with U, R-wide prime, U prime, to put this over here and keep this one in the top. Now we do have a U or D center on top. So as I'm connecting these, I'll look for good edges. I see this one, and this one came in, so I'll use this one and do an R-wide 2 to put it into DB, and there's our partial edge orientation. And then we can do EO quickly like that. Alright, here's one last example. So here's the center connected with an edge, and here's the other edge. So I would put these on the right like that, keeping this in the top, and then I would set these up opposite here, put this one in the back, and since we don't have U or D center on top, we want to look for a bad edge. So this one's bad, so I can do U prime, R-wide prime to put that good edge there and give us a nice edge orientation. Now the other way to do this partial edge orientation and extension is to just do it intuitively. So there's not a whole lot I can say about this. You can just kind of play around with things and find what works. But I'll show an example that I think illustrates this pretty well. So here we have kind of an unusual case. Both of these edges are in place correctly, but not the center. So what we could do to solve this is u wide prime m u wide to just put in the center. And now we also need to pay attention to our edge orientation. So this edge after the m move is going to be in dB. So if we pay attention to that here, we can see that it's going to be good, and we don't need to worry about putting a good edge into dB. And because we already have these correct centers, we don't have to do anything else, and we just have this 3-move extension. Instead of setting it up to one of the other cases, which would take several moves, and then doing the extension from there, we can just do it directly. So there's not much of a structure to this, just kind of play around with your solutions and see if you can find something efficient like that. So that's all for partial edge orientation. Check out the example solves page of the GitHub for some more examples. And you can also check out the 3x3 example solve thread on the speed solving forums. There are tons of YruRU solves there posted by me and Yash. So to end this video, I'd just like to show how I recognize two GLLs. There is a method described on the GitHub, but Yash himself admits that it's not the best, so I'll just show what I do. For cases that have at least one corner oriented, I look at a block around that corner and use that to determine the 2GLL. So the 12 cases are with both of them solved, with these two solved and these two opposite, with these solved and these opposite, with these solved and these adjacent, with these solved and these adjacent, with both sets opposite like an H-perm, with both of these adjacent and a Z-perm pattern, so these matching and these matching, with both pairs adjacent but not a Z-perm. This is the one I call 4 colors because it has 4 colors, but it's not an H-perm. With one adjacent and one opposite, opposite being in front, with one opposite and one adjacent, opposite being on the left. Then there are cases where you have adjacent and adjacent, but there are only 3 colors. So there's one with matching colors in the front like this, and the other one with the matching set on the side like this. So that recognition system can be used for the U, T, L, soon, and anti-soon cases. Just find a block to use and recognize it from there. For the 2 OCLLs that don't have any corners oriented, which are H and pi, you can do the same thing. For pi, I just use this corner, and I do the same recognition, but with these 2 stickers as a pair and these 2 stickers as a pair. So this would be 3 colors, but with the matching in the front. And for the H cases, I picked this corner here. So this would be opposite and adjacent. And another thing to note about the H cases is that they have some symmetry. So the way I deal with that is if I have adjacent in the front, I ignore that and do a U2 and recognize it from here. That's not the best. It would be, of course, better to just recognize these cases as they are, but that would require recognizing this same case from 2 angles, which I can't be bothered to do at the moment. So the way I recognize H's is this block if these are not adjacent. So that's all I have for this video. Thanks to you for watching, and huge thanks to Yash for creating and developing this method. Best of luck with your solves. I'll see you next time. Bye.